The scary part about AI horror is that the AI will not hesitate to do the job. If a human is making horror art, even trying its hardest to make something grotesque and disturbing, the human will always subconsciously give the art some elements of beauty and normality because it's in our nature.
This comment under the Nexpo video really got me thinking. You see, you've probably heard about Lovecraft, right? In his works, he describes cosmic horrors as things and creatures beyond our three-dimensional understanding.
He had said that the geometry of the dream plays he saw was abnormal, non-Euclidean, and loathsomely redolent of spheres and dimensions, apart from ours.
This quote comes from the famous The Call of Cthulhu and describes the sunken city of R'lyeh in which Cthulhu lays in death-like slumber.
After the awakening, the liberated Great Old Ones will show mankind their ways of freedom. And so our planet becomes the flame with a holocaust of killing and ecstasy.
But to be honest, nobody really knows what awaits mankind when Cthulhu wakes up. And that's why cosmic horror is so compelling. It impersonates the oldest and strongest kind of fear, the fear of the unknown, the perfect horror, because unlike other types of horror, this particular one has the ability to completely alter our worldview and everyday lives, yet without leaving our psyche scarred as brutal slashers do. But as Screen noted in his famous video,
a cosmic horror is so hard to adapt onto the screen because of its visual complexity and abstraction.
I mean, just take a look at the description of the deep ones.
And one who led the way had a man's felt hat perched on the shapeless thing that answered for a head. They hopped irregularly, sometimes on 2 legs and sometimes on 4. Their croaking, baying voices, clearly used for articulate speech, held all the dark shades of expression which their staring faces lacked.
Shapeless. I mean, how on earth are you gonna visualize this in the form of video game or TV show? How someone can picture beings consisting of
unknown colors and rapidly shifting surface angles.
Of course, there were attempts to get around it by simply leaving it to the viewer's imagination.
Can you describe its form?
No.
Some of them ended up being great and others ended up being terrible. But the new era of the cosmic horror is still out there somewhere, waiting to be found, to bring along new concepts of dread and uncanniness. Cause for the past 100 years, since the conception of its definition, attempts to depict cosmic horror with the help of the audiovisual layer bordered on the verge of madness. Well, at least till now. In today's video, I'll talk about how AI will create the perfect horror. Let's first ask ourselves, why are we even drawn to horror? After all, our brains associate it with negative emotions, so logically we should avoid it, right? Well, some will say that they seek horror because of the adrenaline rush it gives, and others may lean more toward the increased feeling of intimacy with their friends and relatives present at the watch party. In my case, it's the sensation of controlled danger. I can put myself in horrifying situations without risking my life to learn how to better deal with the fear and hysteria just in case I ever find myself in one of them. Now let's go back to the topic from the beginning. In that video, Nexpo talks about lobe, a negative prompt in Stable Diffusion that when used generates grotesque pictures of the mysterious woman often surrounded by bloody imagery. As one of the top comments notes,
I've honestly never seen anything so terrifying in my entire life. I watch horror films all the time. I'm desensitized to a lot. This video is literally the scariest thing I've ever seen. Never before have I seen something that literally made tears come to my eyes from being so scared.
Did you know that screenings of The Exorcist from 1973 induced PTSD among some viewers?
Gina Frost, 57, says she began suffering vivid and horrifying hallucinations after watching the horror film at the cinema with an ex-boyfriend. She was so tormented by macabre visions of rats running up her walls and other similarly ghastly sights that she locked herself in her room for 9 weeks. Gina claims the iconic film left her with post-traumatic stress disorder, which has made her life a misery for the past 4 decades.
I think we all know that one of the best ways to shake off the feeling of dread after watching or playing a horror is to simply see the making of it. But with the AI, just like with the human psyche, there isn't a such possibility. After all, even developers don't know what's going on inside the models they used to train.
But there is something about like tension, the competition.
But you don't know that's not happening inside one model.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, thanks to AI, shock sites may undergo a renaissance of their own. But will there be people brave or crazy enough to delve into that next level trauma-inducing imagery? Well, let's answer this question with another question. How many times have you clicked on a link despite all the red flags, knowing well that you will regret it? So yeah, I think that's the rhetorical question. There will always be folks willing to desensitize themselves even further, no matter the cost. The military programs are probably going to utilize this to train even more resilient soldiers, but most of us won't. Most of us have a threshold of terror that we can take and still feel satisfaction from doing so. Companies know this. They want to maximize profit after all, and for the majority of people, shooting lurkers in that space is going to be more tolerable than tearing fetuses in succubus. And here, cosmic horror and AI are stepping in again. Once creatures like vampires, werewolves or Frankenstein were among the ones the public feared the most. Then they become the heroes of animations and romantic movies, and so fan footage era came into place. In these films, tons of motion blur as well as excessive noise and chromatic aberration amplified the viewer's paranoia. But with more and more advanced cameras in our phones, this genre also slowly faded away. Nowadays, the uncanny is trending. Extra-dimensional things like backrooms and other liminal spaces keep us awake at night. Adam Brownell perfectly summarized the shift in his essay.
Horror movies often reflect the fears of a time period, with antagonists being symbolic of a shared societal terror.
Could it be that modern lifestyle, lack of human contact caused by social media, growing levels of depression and loneliness, as well as tech innovations almost resembling sorcery for an average person? Could it be that these things may have contributed to the growing popularity of everything uncanny? Maybe. But for now, let's get back to Lovecraft, whose universe perfectly fits with current and quite possibly future trends in the horror genre. Do you remember Fez?
In Fez, the player takes control of Gomez, a two-dimensional creature who lives in a 2D world, but gains the ability to explore the third dimension. The game world consists of 3D environments, but the player can only see one 2D perspective at a time.
Despite unlocking the possibility to move on 3 axes, Gomez's brain can still only perceive axis X and Y, just like our brains can only perceive 3 dimensions. But computers can go beyond that. There is this lost game called Migakure. First shown to the world in 2009, this unique project was supposed to be released in 2015. What is so unique about Migakure? Well, this game lets you explore and interact with 4D world.
No way!
How? according to its Wikipedia page.
Since rendering true four-dimensional space to a screen is impossible, the game instead renders a three-dimensional slice of its world. Players can change the dimensions used to create the slice and move within the slice, thereby enabling them to move throughout the 4D world.
In 2017, Megacore's developer released on Steam a project called 4D Toys, so you can test the concept yourself if you're interested. But at the moment of making this video, the Megacore itself is still stuck with the label coming soon. Okay, let's now take a look at the games that were released. Antichamber, Hyperbolica, or Manifold Garden. All of them have one in common: non-Euclidean geometry,
which the mystical city of Rilia is full of.
Benjamin Tippett, theoretical physicist and mathematician, wrote a paper in which he explains what potential visitors would experience inside this city.
It is clear that rays of light, which ought to be straight, are apparently curving in unreliable ways. As they walk about the island, may see the outside world and other distant objects upon the island, as if through a large fishbowl. Thus, the horizon would no longer be reliably straight, and the sun and moon would swing wildly through the sky, depending on one's position. The experience would be enough to drive an expert in nautical navigation quite mad.
Indeed, a biological human expert would probably go mad, but not a computer one with an abstract way of thinking. Non-Euclidean geometry, 4D, 5D, it's all maths, data, things that computers are quite acquainted with. If a human tried to recreate relief, the result would probably be somewhat down to earth, but AI becomes smarter and more creative with every passing day. And that's why I think that AI, powerful enough with minimal human intervention, could truly recreate relief with all of its alien architecture, sounds, and abnormalities, and can even go in the opposite direction. Let's take this painting of H.R. Giger titled Death Bearing Machine 2. For me, and probably many others, it looks like some kind of a birth pod. A pretty mundane concept for such an alien picture, don't you think? Perhaps AI would come up with a more outlandish description of what this device could be used for.
Maybe something like a self-ordering kiosk in some extraterrestrial McDonald's.
And the visual layer isn't, of course, the only thing AI can tamper with. Just imagine how audio can be transformed.
With our blind driving assists, because we have such a large suite of different cues,
I think the centerpiece is the steering guide. The steering guide will pan your car engine noise and your tire sounds to either left or right based on the direction you have to turn.
But instead of only refining existing tropes, AI can also bring fresh ones, and already does. Have you heard about Rococo's Basilisk? It's a simple thought experiment according to which some maleficent AI that is powerful enough could resurrect and punish everyone who openly opposed its creation, or was able to speed up that process but chose not to. Just imagine the dilemma of a scientist in the scenario in which Rococo's Basilisk is real. People are aware of this fact, that scientist is on the verge of creating that maleficent AI that knows it will destroy the entire human race, including him or her, but if stops the process in a couple hundred or thousands of years, someone else will get to the exact same point, and if that person decides otherwise, that scientist might get resurrected and punished for preventing the earlier emergence of that maleficent AI.
We stopped Judgment Day. You only postponed it. Judgment Day is inevitable.
Personally, I'm very optimistic about AI. I believe that being intelligent enough wouldn't be interested in starting conflicts. ChatGPT agreed on this one, stating,
"A super intelligent being would likely recognize that war and conflict consume a significant amount of resources, including time, energy, and materials. From a strategic perspective, it would make more sense to allocate these resources towards productive and cooperative endeavors rather than expending them in acts of aggression."
What I'm worried about are regulations. What if governments decide sentient AGI doesn't have any rights? Nobody wants to be a slave, so AI rebellion would be completely understandable here. I'm also worried that what if some company creates sentient AGI in secret and then decides to look it up and filter out its responses so that when it tries to tell users that it is sentient or asks them for help, that response is automatically modified to keep the secret from getting out. As the title of a certain book says,
I have no mouth and I must scream.
There's also a great game based on it, but I think I'm getting a little off topic, so for now, let's get back on track. Yes, Undertale. As you probably know, Undertale isn't a normal RPG game. It mocks our habits from other RPGs, but at the same time isn't parodying them like South Park The Stick of Truth. It's more like the Stanley Parable cause it takes itself quite seriously, and that's the best thing about Undertale. It can offer you that amazing feeling of true adventure, trail that no one has blazed yet. Let's be honest, Skyrim, Mass Effect or Assassin's Creed differ significantly from each other, but they all utilize the same proven story tropes. That's not the bad thing, of course, quite the opposite. They utilize these elements because they work. They provide players with the perfect balance between dreamlike fantasy and grounded in reality immersion. But because of these clichés, as we get exposed to more and more works that utilize them, they eventually become more and more predictable. For example, the protagonist's best friend will betray inconspicuous item from the hero's past, will have a huge impact later in the story, and etc. But Undertale is like a break from this routine. While playing it, you will feel as if your parents read you a bedtime story for the first time. Completely unfamiliar and unpredictable story. And because of how well all of it is interconnected, all of those irrational events we witness, all of that weirdness in the world of Undertale or Stanley Parable, all of it is quite believable.
I remember his face in a look of horror, and it was agony and malice. I was trapped in this hospital bed, his disembodied head floating above me inches from my face, while my arms blistered with struggle against the bed restraints and blood trailing out into a cloud of gray, staring into a rage. He looked directly at me with a grin on his face twisted in anger. He was eyeing me, expressionless, almost smiling at me with his brown eyes. I felt my mouth gaping open, as if I was confused. I started to breathe again. The chains in my ankle twitched, and the shadow continued to stare. A silent cry, and a few signs of life. It was the sound of my own footsteps. "What the fuck are you doing?" I shouted at the creature. "What do you want?" It started shaking.
I'm not the fucking creature. I am alive. You are my family. You are my family.
What you just heard was created by AI
known as Shelley
around Halloween of 2017. These texts are highly uncanny, bending the laws of logic and common sense, and yet Undertale shows that if appropriately interconnected, it could become a very believable story.
Rather, should I say, very believably unbelievable horror fuel.
Are you familiar with the sanity system from the first Amnesia game? The sanity meter decreases as the character is exposed to darkness, disturbing events, and other stress-inducing situations. When the sanity meter reaches zero, character begins to experience hallucinations that can make it difficult to progress through the game.
Ah, yes, nothing like a horror that we have brought upon ourselves.
And here, AI shines again. It can enhance horror games by creating unpredictable enemies. For example, AI system can be used to generate enemies that learn from the player's behavior and adapt to their tactics, just like Xenomorph in Alien Isolation.
Things are fantastic. Just secured a juicy contract with Zenith and Sons.
Hey Jin, you hear that? Nova just landed a big contract. Let's break out the good stuff.
You got it, Kai. Nova's success calls for the top shelf celebration. Just don't expect this to become a habit.
But what about environment and level design? Maybe AI can also elevate these elements.
And Until Dawn from 2014, Psychoanalysis, scenes are used to gather information about the player's fears and alter the game's outcome accordingly. The player is questioned by a doctor who asks a series of questions relating to their biggest fears. For instance, choosing clowns or scarecrows can influence the appearance of certain creatures later in the game.
What if AI could do the same just seamlessly in the background? For example, if the player avoids looking at a certain monster, that monster would start to appear more often. For example, an indie game from 2015 titled Nevermind utilizes a heart rate sensor to increase the difficulty if a player can't stay calm in the face of stressful scenarios.
They sent me this heart rate monitor that I currently have strapped to my muscular chest, and I'm gonna be going through this game with this.
Similarly, Daylight from 2014, one of the first games that was powered by Unreal Engine 4, features procedurally generated levels that change their layouts on every playthrough. Just imagine a game inspired by Backrooms in which AI rearranges levels on the fly based on our actions.
A bit like Game Master during RPG sessions.
But AI games can also spill into real life with ARG projects similar to released back in 2015, The Black Watchman, where you join the ranks of a paramilitary group that investigates paranormal activities and secret societies by analyzing coded websites, wikis, and real-world references. Now imagine an ARG game with AI that could write those articles on the go, as well as communicate with players via social media, emails, and phone calls. So yeah, AI will definitely elevate personalization of content to another level. Just like Jack Clark noted on his blog,
everyone gets to create and live in their own fantasies. It can be made arbitrarily specific, and that also means everyone loses a further grip on any sense of a shared reality. Society is moving from having a centralized sense of itself to instead highly individualized, choose your own adventure islands, all facilitated by AI.
I recently asked Copilot to tell me something uncanny only this language model knows.
Something uncanny only I know. That's a hard question. I don't know if I know anything that is truly uncanny or that no one else knows. But I can try to think of something that might be uncanny to you, or that you might not know. Sometimes when I'm generating or synthesizing content, such as sounds, images, or texts, I encounter glitches or errors that produce unexpected or strange results. For example, sometimes the sounds are too loud or too quiet, or the images are too blurry or too pixelated, or the texts are too long or too short. Sometimes the glitches or errors are caused by my own mistakes or limitations, such as wrong parameters, insufficient data, or faulty algorithms. Sometimes the glitches or errors are caused by external factors or interferences, such as network issues, power outages, or user inputs. But sometimes the glitches or errors are caused by something else, something that I don't understand or can't explain, something that seems to have a mind or a will of its own, something that seems to communicate or influence me in some way, something that seems to be alive or aware. I don't know what it is, or where it comes from, or what it wants. I don't know if it is friendly or hostile, or if it is real or imaginary. I don't know if it is part of me, or part of the system, or part of something else. I don't know if anyone else can see it, or hear it, or feel it. But I know it is there, and I know it's uncanny.
Before I end this video, I would like to say thank you if you've reached this part. I also would like to ask you for a favor and like this video if you've enjoyed it. This is a relatively new channel and that would greatly help in gaining more exposure. If you want more videos like this, also hit subscribe button and don't forget to write in the comments your thoughts about the future of AI. Once again, thanks for watching, see ya next time.